everybody. This is Darren Redmond with the Again for the First Time podcast, and I'm so excited. So I'm sort of this ritual guy. As I get older, I realize that there are things I like and there are things I don't. There's three people who I follow, whether on the radio, podcasting, almost every day. And one is Mike North. I mean, we communicated like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. We're both up, which is great. Sean Salisbury, and I worked alongside him on the PSF app. And out here, Christopher Gabriel, where I used to live in California, we became friends. Another Chicago person, So those are like kind of the three. And Mike North is my guest today. This man, 4-time talk show host of the year, 32nd year in Chicago media, was a hot dog stand owner. And I got to talk to him about that because my father had a hot dog stand. It's the bread hot dog stand. So we got to talk about that. City worker, Army vet, and thank you for your service, my friend. Actor, Hall of Famer. Mike North, how are you now?
Darren, it's great to talk to you. We met through Twitter.
Yes.
You're an outstanding guy. I could just tell, you could tell the people that are squared away, that got it right. We're both up. I mean, I used to get home at 3 a.m, but as the years go by and I stopped drinking 17 years ago because I drank enough to last these 17 years.
Yep.
And I get up at 3:30, 4, sometimes 2:30. I watch the news. I think being alone, I read where somebody said, and I didn't even know this. I just thought I didn't want to sleep, but I go to bed at 9, get up at 3 o'clock. 6 hours is enough for me.
100%. Good. Yeah. As long as it's quality, absolutely.
And a nap, my friend, for guys our age, ladies and gentlemen. And a nap is one of the greatest. I don't know, because Darren's still out there working. I work periodically, but I'm semi-retired. I used to work every day since the time I was 14. But a nap saves the day in the afternoon if you can catch one. And I think most people know what I'm talking about. Our age.
100,000%.
Yep.
And I'd say that's one of the changes in life as I've gone over the years that I embrace. That afternoon little siesta, little 20 minutes, close the door, mindfulness, you call it what you want. It is a lifesaver. Let's start there for you real quick. You mentioned you kind of retired, but you have 2 great podcasts right now going on. Let's talk about that for a second. What do you got going on right now? Tell the folks.
We had a thing where you put together 2 episodes of Raging Mouth. It's going to be 5 episodes, of which there's been some interest from a friend of mine who's a big-time director in Hollywood, Adam Rifkin, who did Detroit, Rock City. He did my favorite, The Last Movie Star with Burt Reynolds. And I was on Twitter talking about how much I loved that movie. Right. And people started responding about it. And then he, who's in California, said, who is this guy? And he talked to a guy named Ike Barinholtz, who's an actor. Or if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm this year, he played like some Russian guy who runs into Larry when he's jogging. And he's a Chicago guy who used to listen to me. So they've been listening to this podcast, Raging Mouth, which is going to proceed in a couple of weeks. We had a guy that was putting it together who was ill for a while. So, when the guy that's putting something together, it's like Hollywood. It's like anything else. If one of the main dudes gets sick, you just put it on the shelf and then you come back. Then I got another thing called that I came up with that's heavily sponsored here in Chicago called Somebody Big Just Died. And it's about anybody from Lou Gossett Jr. To anybody that's past Steve Lawrence. I mean, somebody from the past, Joyce Randolph. People didn't even know who she was. That's under 60 years old, who was Trixie in The Honeymooners.
Right. And what a shame that is. What a shame.
Yeah. And you know what? This tells you more in depth in about 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. We did O.J. Simpson, but we did the whole thing. We did that. He was a football player. He was a cutthroat. Same thing goes with anybody else that passes away. We don't homogenize things. We tell the truth. Lou Gossett Jr., people don't know he was supposed to play Gale Sayers in the movie Brian Song, but he popped an Achilles working out for the role, and then Billy D. Williams got the role. But I still work those, and I got anytime anybody passes away, and we'll talk about Kenny Holtzman, I'm sure, through this podcast, but I also got an AM 1000, ESPN 1000 in Chicago. I started handicapping football when I was 14. when there
Right.
was no information out there. Jimmy the Greek was the only guy you listened to.
Right. Right.
1989, I started handicapping football on a small radio station, just thinking gambling on sports is right around the corner, right?
Right.
And little did
You
we
knew.
know,
Yeah.
who knew that we're
Right.
waiting 30 years, which probably is a good thing because it's gotten out of control anyway, Darren. But I
Yep.
got those projects going. I do that show every Friday and it's played live on Saturday too. So I'm very happy at the stage of life I have. I worked, like I said, 32 years. I've never taken a sick day. So I've been very
Wow.
fortunate with my health too. So everything, keep
You look
knocking
great.
on wood one day at a time. Thank you. One day at a time.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But I want to start with somebody important just started. I think that is such a wonderful thing to do and to pursue in the podcast because the talking heads out there, they'll show that montage with the music and all that. That's horrible. Tell the truth. Just what's
Yes.
going on. People are grown-ups. Don't homogenize. I love that you use that term. Don't homogenize anything. It's important. Let's talk about it right now. Ken Holtzman died. If you talk a little bit about that, the man threw a no-hitter. And I got to tell you, the first thing I thought about, your Cubs, following the Cubs. And, I knew Ken Holtzman. That's part of who we grew up with. And we just had Jerry Grody on the Mets die.
Oh,
I mean,
one of the
guy.
great underrated catchers, defensive catchers, ran that pitching staff like George Patton.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was talking to my brother about it earlier today, about Jerry Grody, and because he knew I was going to talk to you today.
Mhm.
And we talked about, he called pitches for guys like Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan, Jerry Kuzman. What did he say?
Yeah.
And Johnny Bench had the greatest praise for him. He said, defensively, if Jerry Grody was on my team, I would have played third base.
Yeah, and here's another thing. If there would have been free agency at that time,
Mhm.
all these guys that were really banned
Yep.
the bench or banned on one team, he would have made millions
Oh,
on the
absolutely.
free agent market. I look at guys, I'll give you your New York and guys. John Blanchard played for the New York Yankees in the 60s.
Mhm.
He was a backup catcher, left fielder, and come off. He was one of the best pinch hitters in baseball, but he
Right.
was a lifelong Yankee.
Right.
Elston Howard had to wait for Yogi Berra to get
Yes.
out of the year. If Elston Howard could have gone free agent now, he would have made
Right.
millions of dollars. So
Right.
it's a whole new ball game now. Those guys had to sit there and
Mhm.
wait their turn. Sometimes that was a good thing,
Mhm.
and sometimes that wasn't such a good thing. Yeah,
No.
you wasted a lot of good years.
So for those who don't know, anybody under the age of probably 50, talk a little bit about Ken Holtzman
Okay.
and the brilliance of him.
Okay, first, I thought in 1967 or 68, I think I want to say, he went to the National Guard.
Mhm.
This is the years when actual people loved this country that played professional sports.
Yes.
Going back to Ted Williams, Bob Feller,
Right.
you name them, Clark Gable,
Yeah.
you name them. Excuse me, they did it. And
Mhm.
Ken Holtzman, during the Vietnam War, decided to do the smart thing. I was a dummy, but then I wasn't because it was a good thing for me to end up going in. But Kenny Holtzman joined the National Guard. Well, the Cub season comes around and he's got to go to the National Guard for 6 months.
Mhm.
And he came home on weekends and went 9-0 and went
Right.
9-0.
Right.
And in
Right.
1967, yeah, it was the battle. And back then, when you could use these terms and there was no big deal,
Oh,
it was the
absolutely.
battle of the Super Jews. Sandy
yeah.
Koufax
Yeah.
versus Kenny Holtzman,
Mhm.
prototypical
Yeah.
pitchers who loved their religion, that,
Loved it.
took their days off on the Sabbath.
Yep.
But then they face each other, and I think the final score with these two left, it was 2-1. And now the guy, and then he goes and pitches in the World Series for the Oakland A's, pitches 2 no-hitters.
Yes.
Was the pride and joy of St. Louis, Missouri.
Mhm.
Made his home there, was active with the boys club. This is stuff you will not hear
Nope.
when I talk about what Darren was talking about, folks. The somebody big just died episodes that I do. our 20 minutes. We did one on Dick Butkus, my good friend. It
Sure.
broke my heart. We do, if somebody drops dead and they had a drug problem, you're gonna know that Robert Blake, our Robert Blake episode
Mhm.
is one of our best episodes we ever did, because we not
Wow.
only talked about his accomplishments from a kid actor on,
Mhm.
and to Beretta, who was one of the great
Right.
early detective series and different, just hip,
Yep.
compared to what they were playing in the 50s and 60s, all the way to him being a murderer,
Yep. Getting away with
being
it.
on drugs and being a scumbag, period.
Yep. Getting away with it.
Yeah.
And being one of the last Little Rascals. You know, I remember
Oh,
watching him on
absolute Mickey.
Mickey. That's
And
right.
yeah. And then, Darren, we had OJ Simpson the other day, and
Right.
it was a hard one for me to do because I have no use for the guy, never did.
As do I.
I just it made me sick that people cheered when they won when he won the trial. I thought Marcia Clark was a disgrace.
She was
It's an
both of
attorney.
them were just a disgrace.
Chris Darden, I heard Alan Dershowitz, a brilliant oil lawyer, on the other side at that time say they hired, and this was maybe a thing of aforementioned of things to come. They hired on race and gender. They got the white lawyer girl, and they got the inexperienced black dude as the other lawyer, and then they end up sleeping together. Did a disservice to the families and let OJ walk away free with plastic gloves on. With elastic
What is
gloves.
that? Yeah. What was that?
Why were you allowed to put the gloves on
Yeah.
with the gloves on already? And any kid that played in the snow
We'll tell you exactly.
in the
right.
60s or 70s knew
Yep.
when you went home, your mother would say, "Put your gloves on the radiator."
Put them on the radio.
Once you put them on the radiator, the
Yep.
gloves shrink.
Yep.
Or once
Yep.
you leave them, they shrink. If you don't use them, they're going to stay that way. Forget about the 100 different DNA samples.
Yep.
Forget about his footprints, the bloody
Yep.
foot. Forget
The-
about all that.
The
glove
Bruto
didn't
Malleys,
fit
the Bruto Malleys, all of that.
all that. It was a bunch of BS.
Yep.
But, and then I have to hear anchor people going, he never lived the life he wanted to. He shouldn't have had the death penalty. So
what do you mean? He squirreled away his money. He went to Florida. He golfed every day.
That's
you know,
it.
It was a hard.
he didn't live in Brentwood anymore.
And I got to tell you, I made a decision on my social media platforms that not even to talk about him. You know, like you don't get my.
Yeah, I get you.
verbiage.
The
You
only
know?
reason I did is because that's my business.
No, that's your job.
I get paid. I hate to say it. I mean, I used to
Don't.
love this show, The Rifleman.
Sure.
Or Steve McQueen, the bounty hunter. When somebody dies, I make money. I mean,
Right.
and I got, Cumberland, I got a funeral parlor, one of the biggest in Chicago, Cumberland Chapels. I have a restaurant. I mean, because it's something different. It's not
Sure.
a Cubs podcast. It's not a White Sox podcast.
No,
It's just something just a little bit different. And that's what I'm glad to see a lot of people getting creative on this thing.
So speaking of funeral homes, what's going on with White Sox? What's going on there? Oh my gosh.
Can I tell you? I could just go off the top of my head 10 minor league teams that could beat them right now. It's just
Right.
a shame. They've had the same ownership for 40 years. They've won one World Series. They got lucky getting that one. They were up 16 games and half, almost blew it to within a game and a half. Would have been one of the great joke jobs in history.
Right.
Jerry Reinsdorf's gotten too old. Seems like nobody was at the rudder. He let Kenny Williams be the GM for 21 years there. Just run it into the ground. The guy. Then I had to hear about the worst term in sports that you never heard about before, called rebuild, which gives general managers 4 years of leeway to fail.
Garbage.
Okay?
Absolute garbage.
Absolute garbage. I'll give you an instance. The Cubs had a bad year a few years back. They just retooled.
Yep.
You didn't hear rebuild. He's a billionaire owner. He's
Mhm.
doing things on his own, where Reinsdorf's asking for the state for help for a new stadium. You gotta, my deal is you got a team worth billions of dollars.
Mhm.
And the White Sox are one of the few teams right now in Major League Baseball that their actual price value has gone down.
Wow.
And you're talking the second biggest market, but
Right.
really a dwarfs compared to the Cubs. The
Right,
Cubs
yeah.
are one of the prize franchises in all of sports.
Yep.
And the White Sox are threatening to move to Nashville, and nobody cares if they do.
Yeah, they threatened to go to Tampa and they ended up staying in that Fakaka
Going
ballpark.
back to that playbook now is a bad thing, especially during these times where you want
Oh.
taxpayer money.
So let me just kind of give a microcosm. When I moved in June from California to Cape
Mhm.
Cod, we drove,
Mhm.
and I was with a few people in my family, my wife and my daughter specifically, who are not huge baseball fans. They like baseball, but you know what? Besides getting a Chicago dog and kind of and you know seeing the Home Alone house and seeing the Planes,
Yeah.
Trains, and Automobiles house, they wanted to see Wrigley Field. You know,
Oh,
I've been there
yeah.
a couple of times. They did not want to see White Sox. If they didn't even know White Sox exist. Who are they? That's what I got. Who are they?
That's true. That's a great pickup. And I'll tell you, I think I had a buddy come in from Las Vegas. He had never seen Wrigley Field. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll meet you at your hotel downtown. I'll drive to get you. And then we'll take a route, Clark Street, and we'll take some side streets. And then we'll pull up and we'll be right there. He
Right.
goes, get out of here. I go, honest to God.
Yep.
So we go down Clark. He's going, where the hell is it? We turn a corner, bing!
There it is.
Apartments and like
Yep.
old school, but then they redid it. It looks great now. The whole neighborhood's beautiful. The Cubs just do it right. The White Sox are stuck on the south side. A lot of a poor area, if you will.
Mhm.
It's just not affluent.
Yep.
A lot. It just has been run wrong. The franchise.
Well, yeah.
The biggest misjudgment of talent in all my years of being in Chicago was the Mancada, Eloy Jimenez. You know,
Mhm.
the 4 year ago rebuild that
Right.
was going to win us 100 games. Tony La Russa, they wanted out. And now they got this guy, Pedro Grifoyle, who was the Kansas City Royal assistant that they didn't even interview when they went
That
for a new
tells you
manager.
something.
That tells you. Right.
It's all you got to know. That's all you
That's
got
it.
to know.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So I love going to Wrigley Field. You know,
Oh,
I've been there
it's
a
the
couple
best.
times. You know, I sat across the street on the roof. I sat inside. It's great. So, you know, I have another podcast called Around the Ballpark. I do.
Oh, great.
Tell people who might be listening to this podcast what the Wrigley Field experience is like.
My Uncle Joe took me to my first game. First of all, my first game was like 1961. I was born in 52. I was 9 years old. The first team I saw was the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Mhm.
And they used to have, you pay for the tickets and you'd wait for them to come in from the buses on Addison.
Mhm.
But what was cool is after the game, the clubhouse was on the second level. So they'd go up some stairs and there was just a fence that you
Mhm.
could see them as they walked across as you looked up. But I waited for Clemente. I
Mhm.
waited for Musial.
Mhm.
I waited for Aaron. I waited for him. And some of these guys became friends.
Right.
Pete Rose became a dear friend of mine. I waited for Pete Rose because I went to the visitor side mostly because we knew our Chicago guys and we had
Right.
waited for
Yeah.
them in the past. Billy Williams, Ernie Banks,
Oh, I
Fred
love Bill.
Santo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
baseball
I'm getting
players.
chills. I love those guys.
Yeah. And I mean, but then I remember the other guys because like my Uncle Leo says, I didn't go to school. I dropped out in my second year. I hung out in the street corners and in the park with my buddies, and we talked sports 8 hours a day. I was built for this. But then when you actually remember the guys, my uncle said, you remember them too? Dick Grote, Bill
Mhm.
Vert, Don Hoke. These are Pirates. Red
Yeah.
Shandy's from the Cardinals.
Mhm.
You know, you start remembering the Eddie Matthewses, the Joe
Yes.
Adcocks, the
Mhm.
Clay Dalrymples.
Yep.
One of the biggest thrills in my life when I hit it big in radio, we went to Las Vegas with the tournament. So it's 1993, and I got my show out there, and somebody says, hey, man, you should go hook up with the guy that's in town. He used to play some real good baseball. I go, who? Bo Belinsky. I go, get the hell out of here. To any kid growing up, Bo Belinsky was a hero. Not
Mhm.
because he threw a no-hitter, not
Right.
because him and Dean Chance became two of the
Gee,
best
Chance. Oh.
duos ever, right?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
But because he dated Mamie Van Doren, he was he was publicly financed by Walter Winchell, an old time guy, and Frank Sinatra. So I meet him they hooked me up with Bo Belinsky, and I meet him at Michael's in the Barbary Coast, a restaurant. Him, me, my couple of his buddies, and me and my wife. And I sat there and I ate dinner with Bo Belinsky, and we talked for about 2 hours. He worked at a Saturn dealership at the time. It was the fringe ball players I loved too, the Smokey Burgesses.
Yes.
You know, I'd be in the White Sox catwalk in center field. The bullpen was right below us. He'd be catching Eddie Fisher or Hoyt Wilhelm. I'd go, "Hey, Smokey," and he'd go, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, catching the ball as he's talking to us. It was just a different time, man.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I was talking yesterday. We recorded the other podcast. And we talked about the Yankees.
Wow.
And we talked to this gentleman, Michael Flack, Vietnam veteran, and been a fan, going to Yankee games since the 50s. Talked about all the different stadiums. And he pulls out a picture that he took, right, of Mickey Mantle on deck, waving and smiling at him, because he told Mick. I mean, back then the players knew. Just a little 12-year-old kid, just, "Hey, Mr. Mantle, would you take a picture?" "Sure, kid."
Yeah, I'll give you one better.
Yeah,
and that's great. I'm not a Yankee fan. I'm a Yankee hater. In the 60s,
sure, yeah. I respect them, but
late 50s, early 60s, White Sox won in 59. They ruined my life because there were no playoffs back then. If there would have been, the Sox would have been in the playoffs every year. But you
the
had to
Go-Go
win.
Sox.
You had to win. Yeah, we were in second place every year. We had a great ball club. We'd win 85, 90, 95 games. But then I go with the Bulls to New York when they played the Knicks. And I scored tickets. We scored tickets, courtesy of the Yankees, third row, Yankee Stadium, the old one.
Right.
I go, all right, I've never been here. I got my field pass. I got my press pass. Now, we're walking down this, and Darren's been down there, so I'm not BSing you folks. As I'm walking down this long hallway towards the Yankee locker room, which is long because that's how they built stadiums back then.
Right. Yeah.
Now they bring them up in an elevator, they pat them on the ass and send them out. But I couldn't help but remember and think that Babe Ruth walked down that hall.
Absolutely.
I couldn't help but think that Lou Gehrig or Tony Lazzeri or Yogi Berra or Johnny Blanchard or Elston Howard. I couldn't. Tommy Tresh. When we were kids, our #1 TV series going to the Catholic school in 7th grade, 6th grade was the Yankees in October because the nuns would wheel the TV in.
That's right. That's right.
We didn't have nothing against the Yankees. We wish the Sox were there. We saw them in 59 on the TV, but I was in 2nd grade. But the Yankees always came through for us. But that's what got me. Then I walk in the locker room. It still was old and small at the time. And I see this massive man, his back to me. And that's when I knew he was on something. He turned around. It was A-Rod. I've never seen a bigger person in my life there. He was huge. I mean, I'm an Ernie Banks guy, and he had 45 homers, but he was 180 pounds.
Yeah, he's all wrists and
all wrists. And here's this guy. He turned around. "How you doing?" And the one guy I'll never forget as long as I live, it was his day to pitch, and you don't mess with pitchers. And but we walked by him. But this is when I knew. Somebody said, "Do you think he belongs in the Hall of Fame?" Years later, I go, "Yes." He was going to pitch that day. It was about a couple hours before game time. And I just go like this. And he looks up and he just stares at me. Mike Mussina.
Moose.
I told my buddies, I said, that man is, I've always loved him. I hated when he moved from the Orioles. I think some guys deserve to play on their teams that they made their name in. Like Cal Ripken Jr. did, like Derek Jeter did, like Ernie Banks did. I think that's missing in a lot of guys, and I think it hurts their careers. But man, Mike Mussina, that hit me. I said, that's the stare of a Hall of Famer, man. Don't mess with me. I'm going out to pitch.
So, it's very interesting that you mentioned some people deserve to be on one team the whole time. I got one for you. And So I was just talking to author Dan Gallagher about the Montreal Expos,
Sure.
and he writes some great books about the Expos.
I remember the
And
first game.
yeah, yeah,
Jerry
beat the
Park,
Mets.
Coco LaBoy.
There you go, Jerry Clark.
Yeah.
Andre Dawson.
Oh,
Do you remember him more as a Cub or as an Expo? To me, it's like a tie. It's
here's
tough.
why he's a hero in Chicago. Well,
Right.
you know, don't forget he's a Marlin, and he
Yeah.
was in their front office. But so some people might consider him that he helped launch their franchise, so to speak. But I'll never forget Dallas Green wanted him, and they had contract negotiations,
Mm.
and he didn't want to fight about it. He told him he told Dallas Green, you would never do that today. Just fill in a figure.
Right.
Filled in the figure, hits 49 homers. I never seen it. The guy was taped from ankle to hip every day. Played hurt. Nobody plays hurt anymore. You know, the NBA for sure doesn't play hurt anymore. If they have a hangnail, they don't play. They make me ill. But he played hurt. The guy that I actually admired the most that played hurt was Bill Buckner.
Oh yeah. People don't realize he was a great Cub. A great Cub.
And not only played well for Boston, but for the Dodgers in left field.
Yep.
I never saw him as a Cub, guys, play without a limp.
Right.
Ever. He limped every game and played his ass off. And then me and my wife were in Boston. We got tickets. He saw me.
Mhm.
I waved to him. I had a Cub shirt on, and he came over and he took a picture with us. And this was a couple hours before game time. We wanted to see if we could get his attention. Told him we missed him in Chicago. But these are guys that are my heroes because they played hurt. They had and they didn't always have to, but he wouldn't have had a career had he decided like they do today to sit out 6 weeks at a time.
They sit out because they get millions of dollars and they loaf and you know they
Oh.
feel I made it. So like let me harken back to something we talked about earlier, right? Ken Holtzman,
Yeah.
against Sandy Koufax. Can you imagine some jackass manager coming up and going, you threw about 80 pitches, all right? I'm going to take you out now. Are you kidding me?
My good friend Ferguson Arthur Jenkins.
Love the man.
As good as any pitcher in the history of the game. And I'll tell you why. Back in those days, they played ace against ace.
Yep.
He lost 5 games in one season, folks, to Bob Gibson, 1-0. 5. 1-0.
Yeah.
And they pitched complete games. Warren Spahn. If you look up Warren Spahn, one of the most underrated players who ever lived. 356 wins. Same as, Fergie Jenkins, Warren Spahn, these guys, I talked to Mike Marshall, the great relief pitcher, years ago. He says, they train wrong, Mike. They train wrong. They're never going to last. You got to, don't overthrow. We're trying to make every pitch that it's a curveball. See, he told me at the time, curveballs are supposed to curve, but they're not supposed to, the pitches that go now that just sink all of a sudden. Bruce Sutter was the first guy.
Right.
He had the split finger. But now it's gotten ridiculous with the TikTok and everything else, the spinning that goes around. It's almost like half their pitches aren't designed to throw strikes.
Right.
They're designed to sucker the batter. It's hurt their arms. But I heard Tony Clark, very inept human being, in my opinion, to be heading the Players Association.
Horrible Players Association president.
Just terrible.
Horrible.
Try to blame the speed up of the game. And I heard Ryan Dempster, former Cub pitcher, say that's a bunch of nonsense. It's the twisting of the arm. It's the wanting to throw everything 100 miles an hour. But what I found humorous about Tony Clark, Darren, he played first base.
Yep.
He missed 600 games in his career. When you could take your time and you weren't a pitcher, you gamed the system, you got guaranteed money. You played 89 games one year, 69 games another year. Now you got the white beard like Harry Edwards, and you're running the Major League Players Association, making bags bigger, making the guys not fighting the second base rule, which is nonsense in itself.
Oh,
Well, that's the
horrible.
worst rule in all of sports, the second base rule. You
Yeah,
play
well,
9 innings and then you just give each other gets the opportunity, but some teams execute better. You don't give somebody a bag at
no,
second
you
base.
never do. You with that ghost runner,
You never
it's
do
just
that.
horrible.
It's a horror. You also, I don't know. Okay, you don't want to bowl the catcher over, but the lane crap is BS. If you
Yep.
slide and they block the plate, that's the way it is. What are you going to do? I
Yep.
mean, quit making everything worse. That
Yep.
was once great. That's all I say. And we see it in all our sports. They're bringing back the kickoff return. They should have never banned it. At
Oh,
the
that
same,
was yep.
at the same time, they bring up Devin Hester should be in the Hall of Fame. Well, yeah, but he was a kickoff returner. Which way are we going to do this now?
Exactly right. And I mean, I played Division III, I coached Division III, and I coached Division I football. So
Yep.
coaching, it's something I know about. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's just
The drop tack. How about the hip hop tackle BS?
oh, what is that?
What are you
Dude, every
supposed
tackle I
to
ever
do?
made was it. That's what you do.
Here's what I would have told Walter Payton, who was a dear friend of mine. I worked for 3 years with Walter on Tuesdays in Chicago on a radio. He would have told me, Mike, if that's the only way they can bring me down, because I'm going to keep trying.
Yep.
I'm going to keep grinding. If the rule is once you grab the guy, okay, which would suck anyway, then the runner's down. Well, runners wouldn't go for that. I saw Zonka. I saw Campbell. I saw you got 190, 180-pound defensive backs at the time having to tackle Earl Campbell. And the way you do that is by any which way you can. You don't have time to position your body.
You tried taking John Riggins down that way.
Right, or Larry Zonka.
Yeah, Zonka, right. Zonka says, here I come.
If they're going to drag you into making that tackle, that's on them. And here's the beauty of it. They know it.
Yes.
Running backs know I got hurt because of that, maybe.
Yeah.
They don't blame. Now we're going to have a rough throw of flag. They got to change it.
Just play flag football already. It's a disgrace. It's so boring. And I love the sport. In fact, I was gonna, when say, you judge a person by their friends, and I mean, you mentioned, Pete Rose, you mentioned, Freddie Jenkins,
yeah,
you mentioned Jim McMahon is, and Fran Tarkenton, by the way,
love him.
One of my favorites growing up. People don't realize how great this
He
man
was unbelievable. He was, well, they won their, listen, I couldn't tell you what 2-2 was, but I could tell you that they played the Bears and won in their very first game.
Right.
George Halas was absolutely livid.
Mm-hmm.
Norm Van Brocken was the coach, who at the time I like how coaches used to dress their own way. Mm-hmm. And Norm Van Brocken looked like a used car salesman or dressed like the head of a grocery store, manager of a grocery store. He really did. Yeah. And he had the short tie and he had the white shirt with the roll-up sleeves.
Right.
And was a hell of a quarterback in his own right, as you know, back in 1960, and with the Eagles. And I saw this guy Tarkenton and Doug Atkins and all these great Bears. They were chasing this guy all over the field. And I just looked, and then not only that, later he had guys like Bill Brown and Dave Osborne, just bruising backs, would clobber you. I mean, my good friend Doug Buffone was an outside linebacker with Butkus with the Bears. And what was great about those teams, for instance, Doug told me, they were friends with a lot of the Packers.
Right.
Warning, McGee, Drinkers, Ditka.
Sure.
They would actually, Fuzzy Thurston was friends with the Bear defense, and so was Forrest Gregg. They would break the huddle, line up, and Forrest Gregg would look at Doug and go, "We're running the sweep to your side," and gain 7 yards because it was executed. You can know it's coming. It was about the execution of it, not that. You can know, Marino's going to throw a 30-yard pass. It's the execution of it.
Yep.
It's not a mystery. But these guys actually told Ed O'Bradovich, Forrest Gregg would go, we're running up the middle with Taylor. Boom! 6 yards.
Yeah. You gotta love that stuff.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
so I want to, a couple things before we end up.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, people don't realize that people say, Chicago pizza is not as good or it's better than New York pizza. And I try to tell people, they're both great. They're just different.
Yeah.
And like I try to explain to people in New York, there's the bread hot dog in New York, Coney Island. It's wonderful. Chicago dog is delicious. It's wonderful. It's just different. Explain to those who don't realize the wonder and the tastiness and the delectability of a nice, good Chicago dog.
Well, we have two different types. We have the thin, just
Right.
like they do in New York. We slice it different. I think we slice it in squares. They slice it in New York in triangles.
Right.
But we also have Lou Malnati's. We have deep dish pizza, which I love.
Yeah.
Very filling. You also, if you've been downtown, you have Uno's and you have Adue's and all sorts of great pizzerias down there. Bottom line is, I like New York. In my opinion, I worked for 3 days. I remember when Imus left, I worked for 3 days in his spot. I
Wow.
don't know if the place is still there. I went to a restaurant called Campanella's.
Mm-hmm.
And it was outstanding. But I also had some thin pizza there, New York. It was very good.
Yeah.
I'm partial to Chicago. It's what I've eaten my whole life, but
they're good.
They're good. I did not touch the hot dogs in New York. Believe me when I tell you, the carts on the street, Darren, I couldn't go there, baby. I just couldn't go there.
Dude,
I saw the guy smoking a cigarette. He flicks it. He goes, "What do you need?" I go, "That's okay." I saw a Tasty Freeze truck. I stayed away from it.
Yeah. You're a
By
smart
Columbus
man.
Square there. But I'll tell you what was our favorite. And I went there numerous times. I got the Ellis Island Award there with some great people out there. And we went to Ellis Island. But Carnegie Deli was my
How
go-to.
good was that? Oh, big sandwich.
It's a shame it's closed.
I know.
I was walking down the street with a corned beef this thick, man. And every time we went to New York 5, 6 times in about a 10-year span, stayed right across from Central Park most of the time. I love the plaza. I mean, you walk into the plaza and I see like Jackie Mason sitting having breakfast.
Thank you. God, get out of my head. I was just about to say, my wife and I walking down the street, we bump into Jackie Mason. He's just there.
Wait, and then the next day I come down and I get seated. I turn Dick Van Dyke sitting there. I go, the hell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's a really, last time I went there, I didn't dig it. I went there a few years back to talk to some people on some business, but it was always a good stop off place in the 90s, 2000s, 2005. It was a great
different.
place.
It was different.
Yeah, everything's different. That's just the way it is.
I
It
remember.
will change. It will go back.
Yeah, it's all a pendulum.
That's
So
what it does.
I want to tell people, like last time I was in Chicago, and when I, had the brats and the hots when I was at Wrigley Field. The key I found out from talking to my friend Christopher, I didn't realize. I said, "What is it in there that snaps? It's so good." Celery salt on the hot dog.
Yeah, what we do is I
It's
had
so
3
good.
stands. I had 3 stands, and what my dogs did, we steamed them. A lot of places put them in water. We had a steam table. That means you fill the table up with water. You put the grill on top, not the grill, the skillet on top. Put the dogs in. You have burners underneath, and it steams the dogs. You put them on poppy seeds buns, mustard, relish, onions, tomatoes, pickles, couple hot peppers, which we call dynamite sticks, and then celery salt. You wrap the dog with some French fries, home cut. You're home free. Wash it down with a pop. We call it pop here, and that's it. So I was in the business 16 years. Had 3 different places. Plus, I had some hot dog carts in the park, and I was so I didn't make it. I didn't get into radio till my late 30s, and so I had already worked for a living. So,
but that probably made you better at your craft.
Oh my God! I was prepared because we talk sports at the hot dog stand every day. It was better than going to school. Going to school. I didn't go to journalism school. I rented time out. Back then, you couldn't just have a podcast.
Right.
I brokered time, and they heard about it, and one thing led to another. I ended up getting this gig. To make a long story short, it was a changer in my life. But I appreciate every day because I was on my feet From the time I was 14, delivering papers at 3, 4 in the morning till 38, 39, 40. I didn't sell my stands until I knew the station was going to make it. I was on my feet 16 hours a day for the last 10 years with the hot dog stand. So now I hear guys, they complain about their headphones being scratchy or
Ridiculous.
I go, boy, you guys don't even know. You know, they come out of, they don't even know.
So,
You
so
know?
I want to share one last thing with you before I
Sure.
go. I wanted to get your opinion on.
Sure.
So I have a good friend of mine, and both, we're not name dropping, it's just people that we know.
Sure.
And he played for the Washington Capitals, and he played for the Nordiques and the Minnesota North Stars. Kevin Kilkaminski, great guy. And he says, bar none, out of all the stadiums, MSG, Boston, the old stadium in Chicago was the greatest place to play in the game, rats and all.
Yeah.
He said it was just the best. So if you could, and I'm getting chills because we would sit and have a cigar, and talk about it.
Well,
Explain what that was like.
well, in my opinion,
Yeah,
I don't care what anybody says. The greatest hockey player I ever saw was Bobby Hull.
of
I don't care
course,
what
of course, yeah.
I
And by
don't
the
even
way,
want to.
you
I
have
don't
the
want to hear
greatest.
about. I know Gretzky and
No,
Rich
no, no,
Roll.
no. Yeah,
No.
hockey people will agree with you.
Well, I saw him always skate behind the net, look around, and then start the rush. And the whole stadium would stand. I've never seen that since. And I mean, every time he did a rush, I got up. The stadium, Arthur Wirtz, the Ice Volleys, Sonia Henney
Right.
was very tight with Arthur Wirtz, from what I understand back in the day. The walk to standing room up the stairs would kill you. There was no elevators.
I heard it was like this.
Yeah. I mean, and when you look, and I mean, people, older guys too, going up 3 stories, 4 stories, they were like ants. But the stadium with the organ, with the way that it concealed the music, I mean, the sound of the fans, to see a Bobby Hull, who was my hero until he wasn't. He just went nuts down the line. Still a nice, great guy. I've never seen another player like him. He scored 50 goals, folks, like 6, 7 times when nobody did that stuff.
And by the way, with a stick that was as flat like this.
Right. And with only 5 other teams, they played each other 12 times.
Yep.
So you knew every move they were going to make. I'll give you another example. I'm going to do a show, Boomers Rule. That's it. Connor Bedard is supposed to be all that.
Right.
I hear it. I knew Patrick Kane. I interviewed him first. Same with Jonathan Taves. Great teams. Connor Bedard broke his jaw. He was out for 6 weeks.
Yep.
Bobby Hull broke his jaw, missed 1 game, lived on liquids for 6 weeks, and led the league in scoring and in goals.
How great is that?
He was a beast. He was a beast.
Is that?
There's only one guy I saw that was as big as him, as far as Gordie Howe, another guy.
Oh, I was dude, he's the legend. Even Gretzky goes, that's the guy.
Beast.
Yeah.
I mean, I show him, they got that picture of him in the chair on the fishing boat.
Yeah.
He's got his shirt off. I go, that looks like it was painted on his body, that they just stuck a head on him. It's like, it was unbelievable. These guys were beasts. Hockey is the only sport, in my opinion, that has not changed.
No, it really hasn't. It really hasn't.
No. They had a big brawl the other night. Oh, God, don't fight. I loved it. They settled things. No seeming feelings like men used to do.
It's done. Once they fight, that's it.
It's over.
Yeah, it's great. Mike, I want to thank you so much. Mike North as my guest. This has been fantastic. We got to do this again.
I'll do it anytime you want.
I love it. And if you could just, again, tell people how they can hear you and listen and follow the name of the podcast. Go ahead, please.
By the way, can you see my whole head? Because I've only been on the little part up top. Are you sure?
Yeah, I see the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to.
Red hair, by the way, my friend.
You know what? How's a toupee? Is it crooked?
No, it's good.
No, I'll be up at 3 a.m. on Twitter with Darren.
And I'll be up with you. Yeah.
We'll be crying about people blocking the street that I would just drag
Oh,
by
don't
the
get
hair.
me started. Don't get me
Listen.
started.
I would run, if I was a little younger, I'd run for mayor of Chicago. I'd bring back three things: tear gas, billy
Mhm.
clubs, and you're not getting bail and you're going to jail.
Right.
Do it
Yeah.
and you're all going to jail. If you
Mhm.
block the street, you're going to jail.
Yeah, public nuisance. Yep.
That's it. But anyway, I digress. Check me out at North to North, NORTH, the number 2 NORTH,
Mhm.
or check me out on the Barroom Network.
Mhm.
I have an interest in that, which I have my Somebody Big Just Died podcast on. I'm also on ESPN 1000. I do some bear stuff. I do a lot of guesting. It's been fun to be on with my boy Darren. I saw a younger picture of you.
Yes.
You had the red hair back in the day.
Back in the day,
that
Ginger
right?
Man. Yeah, absolutely.
And I respect what you do too. You work with kids.
Thank
I
you. Yes.
I was I used to play ball at a park, and I knew a couple of special ed teachers, and I knew a lot of the kids. They had the program in the park district in the field house, and the patience you guys got is just like
The kids are wonderful. The
They
kids
are.
they're just wonderful, and just I can go all day, but you know what I'm saying.
I
Back to
get
you.
you. I get
But
you. It's rewarding,
thank
no doubt.
thank you for being my guest, and we'll
My
talk
pleasure,
again
baby.
soon. Talk to you at 3 a.m. Take care.
I'll see you.
Bye now.